My name is Ryan. I am 23 years old, and I want to tell you about the night I drove 45 minutes into the mountains to pick up a free couch from a stranger on Facebook Marketplace. The house was pitch black, not a single light on. And when I heard the voice calling me down into the basement, there were already 4 men waiting in the dark. I got out, but the last message they sent me afterwards still sits in my phone. Subscribe before we get into this. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from tonight, because I have 4 stories about Facebook Marketplace, and all of them involve people who were not what they seemed. Let me start with mine. I had just moved into my first apartment. Post-grad broke, excited and completely unprepared for how empty an apartment feels with nothing in it. I had a sleeping bag on the floor, a box of kitchen stuff from my parents, and a folding chair. That was it. I needed furniture, and I could not afford to buy any. So I did what broke people do. I opened the free section of Facebook Marketplace and started scrolling. If you have ever spent time in the free section of Facebook Marketplace, you know it is a very specific experience. Most of what is listed there is garbage, broken recliners, mattresses with stains that have their own ecosystems, particle board shelves with the laminate peeling off. I scrolled for over an hour and found nothing I would put in my apartment. Then I refreshed the page. At the very top of the feed, posted less than 60 seconds earlier, was a listing titled "Brand New Couch, Never Used, Free for Pickup." The photos showed a couch in what appeared to be genuinely good condition. Clean fabric, no visible damage. It looked like something someone had bought and changed their mind about. I typed a response immediately. Within 3 minutes, I had a reply from the seller. He said the couch was mine if I could come pick it up that night. He said he was available anytime after 9 in the evening. It was noon when he sent that. I noticed the timing. 9 at night is well after dark. I live near the Rocky Mountains where the towns get sparse fast and the nights get genuinely dark in a way that city people are not always prepared for. I told myself he probably worked a late shift or had something going on during the day. I said yes and went about my afternoon. At 8:30, I texted him that I was on my way and typed his address into my GPS. The estimated drive time was 45 minutes. I pulled out of my apartment complex, and within 10 minutes, the housing density had dropped significantly. Within 20 minutes, I was on a 2-lane road with no streetlights. Within 30, I was on a dirt road that my GPS described as a valid route with complete confidence. The road was single track, trees on both sides, no other lights visible anywhere. My headlights were the only source of illumination for as far as I could see in any direction. When the GPS said I had arrived, there was a house. It was a decent-looking house, all things considered. Single story, a truck in the driveway, a porch light that was off. No other buildings visible. The nearest neighbor was miles away. I texted the seller that I was outside. His reply came back in under 10 seconds. It said, "Okay," just that one word. I sat in my car for a moment looking at the house. The porch light was off. Every window was dark. Not low-light dark the way a house looks when the occupants are in a back room. Completely dark, as in no lights on anywhere in the building at all. I got out of the car and walked to the front door and knocked. From the other side of the door, very close, someone said, "Door's unlocked, come on in." The voice was right there, right on the other side of the door, not calling from somewhere deeper in the house, standing directly behind it. I pushed the door open a few inches and looked in. The interior of the house was completely dark, not a single source of light. The only illumination in the entire space was a rectangle of pale moonlight coming through a window on the far wall. Everything else was shadow. I called hello into the dark. A voice responded from my left, through an open doorway. The voice came from below, floor level. The doorway led to a staircase going down, and from somewhere at the bottom of those stairs, in what had to be a basement, the voice said, "Come on down." I got the couch ready to go. I stood in the doorway of a dark house in the middle of nowhere at 9:30 at night, listening to a voice invite me down into a basement. I said, "No, that's okay. I actually have to go." I pulled the front door shut and walked back to my car quickly, but without running the way your body sometimes insists on a performance of calm, even when nothing about the situation is calm. I got in. I locked the doors. I started the engine. Before I pulled out, I looked back at the house. Through the front windows in the faint moonlight coming through the glass, I could see shapes. 4 of them. Standing at the window side by side, looking out at my car. Not moving, not coming outside. Just watching me from the dark interior of the house as I left. I drove the 45 minutes back to my apartment in silence with both hands on the wheel and the doors locked. When I got home, I had 3 new texts from the seller's number. The first asked why I had left. The second asked if I still wanted the couch. The third said, "You're lucky." That was the whole message. 2 words, no explanation, no context. Just, "You're lucky." I showed the text to a friend the following morning, and he looked at them for a long time without saying anything. Then he said that the couch was never the point. I think about that sometimes when I'm driving at night and the housing density starts dropping and the street lights start disappearing. I think about what was actually in that basement. I think about the 4 men standing in the dark, watching me drive away. I got lucky. The text said so itself. The second story. My name is Connor. I was 20 at the time, and I want to tell you about the apartment viewing that ended with me running through a forest at sunset with no idea if anyone was behind me. I was flying alone to a small town I had never been to before to look at places to live for school. Before the trip, I had done research on Facebook Marketplace and set up a few apartment viewings. One of them was in a residential area outside of the main town center. The landlord had communicated normally over email and asked me to call an hour before arrival to confirm I was coming. An hour before arrival, I called. No answer. I started walking toward the address, figuring he would call back before I arrived. About 40 minutes later, my phone rang. He asked if I was still coming. I said yes, I was about 5 minutes away. He exploded. He was furious, genuinely and disproportionately angry. He said I was not supposed to arrive for another hour. I quickly realized what had happened. I had an old phone that did not automatically adjust for time zones, and I had forgotten to change it manually. I had shown up an hour early. I apologized and explained. He was still angry. I told him I was happy to wait outside the property until the agreed time. He said no, very quickly, almost panicked about it. No, do not wait outside. I stood on the street for a moment processing that. A landlord who did not want a potential tenant waiting outside his property. That was unusual. I filed it and walked to find somewhere to get food while I waited. At the agreed time, I came back. The man who answered the door was in his 50s. His clothes were partially torn. He had not showered recently in a way that was visible. He was not how I expected a landlord to present at a property viewing. I stayed anyway. I needed somewhere to live, and the options were limited. As we stood in the front area discussing the property, I saw a second man come out of a back door of the house. Young, disheveled. He looked at the landlord and me, immediately turned around, walked fast to a car in the back, and drove away. I asked who that was. The landlord said it was someone else he had been showing the place to earlier. Then the landlord started asking me questions. Not the questions a landlord asks. Not questions about my rental history or references or move-in date. Questions about my age, what I was studying, where I was originally from. Asking each one while maintaining eye contact that was sustained well past normal. I answered as vaguely as I could. We went inside. The exterior of the property looked passable, but the inside told a different story. The rooms were in poor condition in ways that suggested long-term neglect rather than recent vacancy. When I asked about specific issues, the landlord deflected every question. He said the place was unfinished. He said it like that was an explanation rather than a description of a problem. After going through the interior rooms, the landlord told me he wanted to show me the shed in the backyard. Before I had finished processing that sentence, he was already leading me toward the back of the house, out the back door, away from the street into the yard. The shed was a detached structure at the far end of the property, beyond the tree line, not visible from the road. When he opened the shed door, I saw stairs going down. He reached inside and flipped a switch. No light came on. Here is the thing that I have thought about many times since. A normal person's response to a light not working is surprise, a small sound of irritation or confusion. Maybe a comment about needing to replace the bulb, an acknowledgement that the light is not working. He made none of those responses. He flipped the switch, got nothing, and started walking down the stairs into the dark as if this was entirely expected. As if the light not working was not an obstacle at all. As if he had been down those stairs in the dark many times before and had no need for the light. He got to the bottom. He stood in the dark at the foot of those stairs. He turned and looked up at me and said, "Aren't you coming down?" I looked back at the house. A second man was standing in the backyard doorway, looking at me. I ran. I went into the trees behind the shed and I ran. I did not look back. I kept running until the sound of the property was completely behind me, and I was deep enough into the forest that the light had shifted to the orange of late sunset through the branches. After about half a mile, I stopped and turned around. No one was behind me. I was in a forest at sunset in a town I had never been to, with my phone as my only navigation tool. I pulled up maps, found my hotel, and walked for about 45 minutes through increasingly familiar streets until I was back somewhere recognizable. When I got to the hotel, I searched the property address online. The house had been listed as abandoned for 3 years. The Facebook Marketplace listing for the apartment viewing was already deleted. I debated calling the police. I decided they would have very little to work with. I had no photos, no recorded conversation, just a personal account of a strange encounter at a property that was not legitimately for rent. I never found out who those men were or what they intended. What I do know is that the shed had a basement. The light did not work. A man was already down there expecting me to follow him, and a second man had positioned himself between me and the exit. And when I ran, nobody chased me, which means either they did not need to, or they decided I was not worth the effort. I do not know which of those is more disturbing. The third story. My name is David. My wife's name is Karen, and this one is about a car that was listed on Facebook Marketplace, a spike strip in a darkened parking lot, and how close we came to driving directly into it. We had been looking for a used car for a few months. Nothing perfect, just something reliable in our price range. When a listing appeared that matched what we wanted at a price significantly below market value, we both stopped scrolling and looked at each other. We messaged the seller immediately. He responded normally. Friendly, detailed, answered our questions. We agreed to meet in the parking lot of a large mall near us at 5:30 that evening after he got off work. It was a public place, well-lit, populated, a reasonable choice for a private sale. 5:30 came and we arrived. We texted the seller to let him know what car we were in. He said he was running late. We went inside and got food at the food court and came back. Another hour passed. He said he was almost there. The mall was quieter now. The parking lot was less full. The sun was down. Then his message changed everything about the situation. He said he was stuck in traffic and suggested we meet him at a different location. He sent an address. He said it would be easier for him to come from where he was. I looked up the address. It was a gas station about 30 minutes away, just off an interstate exit in a rougher part of the city. I checked the gas station's hours. It was not a 24-hour location. It was already closed. My wife looked at the address and said she had a bad feeling about this. She pointed out the sequence of events, the delay, the change of location, the fact that it was now fully dark, the fact that the new meeting point was a closed business in an isolated area. I heard all of that and agreed with it and drove to the gas station anyway, because the car was a good deal and I wanted it, and I had spent most of that evening waiting, and I did not want to have wasted the evening. We pulled into the parking lot. It was almost empty. A few vehicles parked along the far edge. Very little ambient light. The gas station building was dark. My wife said she could see the car. She pointed toward the back of the lot where a vehicle matching the listing photos sat in a dark spot well away from the entrance. I started driving toward it, and then I stopped. Something in the way the light was hitting the ground in front of us looked wrong. A texture on the pavement that was not right. I got out of the car and looked at the road surface. A spike strip was laid across the road at the exact point where I would have needed to drive to pull up alongside the listing vehicle. A professional spike strip, the kind used for tire deflation. Laid flat and dark against dark pavement, almost invisible until you were directly on top of it. If I had driven those last 15 feet, I would have blown both front tires. We would have been immobilized in a dark, empty, closed parking lot at night, unable to leave quickly visible to anyone watching. I got back in the car. I reversed out the way we came and drove home without stopping. I filed a police report when we got back. I gave them the seller's number, the listing, the address, the details of the evening. I told them about the spike strip. The listing was taken down within a few days. I never heard back from the police about whether anyone was identified or charged. We found our car through a dealership 2 weeks later. Paid more than I wanted to, but drove it home on 4 intact tires. My wife still talks about that evening sometimes. About how close I came to driving forward those last 15 feet. About how completely normal the whole transaction had seemed right up until that moment in the parking lot when something in my brain said stop. I cannot tell you exactly what it was, the texture of the light on the ground. Something not quite right about the way the surface looked. Whatever it was, I stopped and got out and looked, and there it was. Already in place, already waiting. The fourth story. My name is Michael. I am 30 years old, and I want to tell you about the ugliest statue I have ever seen in my life. The stranger who paid $2,000 for it at 11 at night in a parking lot, and the thing he said to me before he drove away. My grandfather passed away in the fall of 2015. He had been sick for a long time, and his death, while devastating, was not a surprise. What was a surprise was the chaos that followed between different branches of the family. The short version is that some relatives took what they considered valuable and sent everything else to us in a rented truck. Boxes of things they had deemed worthless. It turned out to be extraordinary. My grandfather had served in the Navy for 25 years and had traveled the world. His journals and photo albums were among the most remarkable things I have ever read. He was a fascinating man, and most of us had not fully known that while he was alive. But among all of this remarkable material, there was also a significant amount of random, accumulated objects. Old records, small collectibles, things that had been sitting in storage for decades. I had sold things on Facebook Marketplace before, so I proposed to list what I could sell, what I could, and split whatever I made with my mother and brother. They agreed. Most things sold quickly and for fair prices. The old vinyl records were especially popular. Someone even bought his bottle cap collection. The one item I did not expect to sell was a small figurine, about the size of a thick paperback book. Carved from some kind of dark stone, black and slightly glossy in places, rough in others. It had clearly come from somewhere in the Pacific based on my grandfather's service history. It was beautifully made in terms of pure craftsmanship, but what it depicted was genuinely strange. It looked like a figure in the process of transformation, part human, part something else. The proportions were wrong in ways that seemed intentional rather than unskilled. The expression was not quite an expression of anything I had a word for. It made me vaguely uncomfortable to look at it directly. I listed it for $3 thinking I would be lucky to get rid of it. Within a day, a woman agreed to buy it for the asking price, and we arranged a pickup. On the morning of the day she was supposed to come, a second message came in from a different account. The message was brief. "Do you still have the idol?" That word, idol. I had been thinking of it as a figurine, a statuette, a carving, a little thing. He called it an idol. In the specific weighted way someone uses a technical term they have clearly used many times before, I replied that I had already committed to selling it to someone else. I was honest, but I was also hoping he might make a better offer. He did. The next message was 4 words, "Call me." Name your price, followed by his number. I called him. His first question was how much I had agreed to sell his idol for. His. He claimed ownership of an object that had been in my grandfather's house for decades. When I told him the asking price was $3, he reacted with genuine distress, like I had casually disclosed something offensive. He made an offer. $1,000. When he misread my silence as hesitation, he doubled it. $2,000 in cash for a $3 listing of an ugly little stone figure that I had genuinely expected to throw away. I called the first buyer, apologized sincerely, and canceled the deal. I arranged to meet the man in the parking lot of a Whole Foods across from my apartment, a public place, well-lit security cameras, a place I had used for stranger meetups before. We agreed on a time, but he said he could not give me a specific window. He would call me when he was 5 minutes away. 7 o'clock came and went, then 8, then 9, then 10. I kept checking the parking lot from my apartment window, watching the light level drop and the lot empty out, wondering if I was being pranked. At 11 at night, my phone rang. He said he was a few minutes out. I watched the parking lot from my window. A Lincoln Town car rolled in, slowly, headlights scanning the lot. I went downstairs and walked over. He got out of the car when I waved. He was in his 50s, tweed jacket, badly maintained. He had the specific look of someone very intelligent who had not been taking care of himself. Bright, alert eyes and a face that suggested he had been preoccupied with something consuming for a very long time. The transaction was like a drug deal. I wanted to see the cash. He showed it to me. I counted it. He watched me count it with complete patience. Then I handed over the figurine. What happened when he took it was genuinely unsettling. Not in a theatrical way, not in a way that was performed for my benefit, in a way that appeared to be entirely private. He held it in both hands and looked at it, and something in his face changed. Something released, like a person who has been carrying a weight for a long time and has finally set it down. I asked him why it was worth that much, what the thing actually was. He looked at me. Then he said, "If you only knew what this thing is capable of, the blood that has been spilled for it." He was not being dramatic. He said it the way you state a fact you consider obvious. Quietly, like he was slightly surprised I had to ask. Then he got in his car and drove out of the parking lot without another word. I stood under the parking lot lights with $2,000 in my pocket, watching his taillights disappear. I have thought about what he said many times since. I do not believe the figurine had any actual power. I am a practical person, and I do not reach for supernatural explanations when mundane ones are available. What I believe is that the man in the tweed jacket believed it, completely and without reservation. He drove several hours in the middle of the night and paid $2,000 in cash for a $3 listing because he believed the thing was genuinely significant, important enough to acquire at any cost, and a person who believes something that intensely will act in accordance with that belief. Whatever he thinks this thing enables or requires, he is going to pursue it. I do not know what happened after he drove out of that parking lot. I never saw anything in the news that connected to what he said. I have no way of knowing what he did. But every now and then, I think about that night. The ugly little statue, the brightness in his eyes when he held it, the matter-of-fact way he described blood being spilled over it. And I think about my grandfather, sailing around the Pacific for 25 years, coming home with journals and photographs and stories and objects, setting them down in a house where they sat in storage for decades waiting. I do not know where my grandfather got that figurine or what he knew about it. I never thought to ask him when he was alive. 4 stories, a free couch that was never the point, an apartment with a basement someone needed me to descend into in the dark, a car sale with a spike strip pre-positioned across the road, and a statue that a man drove through the night to acquire and would not explain. All of them started with Facebook Marketplace. All of them looked ordinary at the beginning. A listing, a message, an arranged meeting, the normal mechanics of buying and selling things between strangers. Ryan got out because the voice in the basement made something in him move before he finished thinking about it. Connor got out because he looked back at the right moment and ran. My wife and I got out because I stopped the car and got out and looked at the pavement. And I am still thinking about what I might have sold and to whom. The text Ryan received after he drove away said 2 words: "You're lucky." That is the part I want you to sit with, because it was not a threat. It was not angry. It was not the message of someone who was frustrated that their plan failed. It was an acknowledgement, a calm, factual acknowledgement that he had done something in getting out of that situation that not everyone had done. There were people who came before him who did not drive away. Think about that when you are scrolling through a listing at midnight and something is just slightly off. Not wrong enough to be obvious, just slightly off. That is the moment, right there, before you talk yourself out of it. That is when you close the app and go to sleep.